My wife Abby derived great pleasure from attending cinematic exhibitions. If I wished to gratify her, I was obliged to take her to a film that satisfied one of 4 criteria: animation, action, adventure, drama, or romance. She was particularly partial to romantic films, which are sometimes designated chick flicks. Abby also admired actors Tom Torino, Matt Wright, and Brad Talbot. They were her preferred performers. Our inaugural date was when I accompanied Abby to see Sleepless in Seattle. She did not care for Tom Hanks's work, but she was captivated by the narrative. Years later, she expressed a renewed appreciation for the film. She revealed that she developed romantic feelings for me after watching that film. The precise circumstances surrounding this transformation remain unclear, even after 12 years of marriage. Abby maintains an attractive appearance at 5 feet 6 inches and 115 pounds. She has a well-proportioned figure, and her dark emerald green eyes stand out against her raven hair when she dresses up. She continues to garner attention. I am John Sawyer, and I am not without personal appeal. I am 6 feet 1 inch and 180 pounds with sandy-colored hair and blue eyes. Many individuals have informed us that we constitute an aesthetically pleasing couple during our tenure at the university. I never experienced difficulty in finding female companionship, but when I met Abby, I recognized that I did not. I have always believed that Abby and I are meant to be together. We met in high school and fell in love. Our love grew during our 4 years at university, and we got married 3 months after graduation. Abby is my true love, my soulmate, and my everything. I cannot imagine life without her. While we adore our 2 children, it is challenging to be spontaneous and unrestrained when they are around. Tonight, we had planned to spend the evening together, but we decided to go dancing in the city with 3 other couples. We knew we would be out late and drinking, so we reserved accommodations at a downtown hotel. We arranged for my parents to care for our 2 daughters for the night, anticipating a memorable evening. However, the experience proved to be more unique than anticipated. Upon arrival at the nightclub, I sensed a subtle unease, though I couldn't precisely identify the source. The women appeared constrained, and one of the men exuded a self-assured demeanor among the 3 couples. I found particular interest in George and Helen, as well as Bob and Anna. George was a software engineer, while Helen was a stay-at-home mother. At this juncture, it is pertinent to interject that the aforementioned individuals were not particularly forthcoming with information. The couple in question were a homemaker with 3 children and her husband, who owned his own plumbing company. The wife handled the office work. Of the other couples, I found Chad and Thelma to be disagreeable. I was indifferent towards Thelma, but I found Chad to be unpleasant. However, Abby and Thelma had been college roommates and remained close friends, so I had to tolerate Chad as far as I could tell. Chad was involved in the movie industry. He mentioned that he was an agent, but it seemed he was not particularly successful. Thelma, on the other hand, had a well-paying job. I am currently employed as a pharmaceutical representative, and I also work as a financial advisor at one of the larger brokerage firms. Initially, the pace of business was relatively slow, but it has since accelerated to a point where I am unable to accommodate the volume of clients with my current firm. Once a certain number of clients is reached, the firm typically requests that the advisor train a new associate and transfer some of their clients. However, I have been able to retain the most profitable client for myself. This is the second occasion on which I have been obliged to do so, and it appears that I shall be required to do so again in the near future. I am earning a very good income. Abby commenced her career as an administrative assistant for Mike Winston, who was an executive vice president at a regional bank. This was when our 2 daughters were born 1 year apart. Abby remained at home with them until Stacy, our youngest, started at school. Then one day Mike telephoned her and offered her a part. Abby requested my opinion, and I advised her to seize the opportunity. If one were to assume that I had erred in allowing Abby to resume her career and that she was now engaged in an illicit affair with her superior, such an assumption would be erroneous. Mike is 62, bald, and, more importantly, wholly devoted to his wife and 5 children. Nevertheless, something felt amiss, but I did not dwell on it. I was eager for an evening of dancing with my wife and a night of passion to follow. As we mingled at the event, we encountered, as is often the case when one engages in dancing, one encounters a number of agreeable individuals. In this instance, we encountered Fred Abbott and his wife, Brenda, with whom we had maintained an acquaintance from our college days. While I was engaged in conversation with them, Abby and the others proceeded to our table. I was on the verge of joining my wife when the music began to play. However, a commotion at the entrance drew my attention. A crowd had gathered and Brenda exclaimed, "What's wrong?" Fred inquired, and I happened to glance over and observe an exceptionally handsome man. He was somewhat shorter, perhaps around 5 feet 6 inches or 7 inch, but his appearance was undeniably impressive. Both Fred and I confessed our ignorance. Brenda gushed that he and his fiancée Rita Summers are two of the most popular actors in Hollywood. Fred craned his neck to see past Brad. He then asked if Rita Summers was at the event. Brenda playfully slapped her husband's arm. She then said that, based on his appearance, Brad would receive a rating of at least 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. I was completely taken aback when Brad approached our table and requested that my wife dance. She readily agreed and proceeded to dance for the next 4 songs. I was visibly displeased by this turn of events. I returned to the table and sat down, while my wife had not even bothered to inquire whether I was comfortable with her dancing with someone else. When the 5th song commenced, I attempted to intervene, but Chad's glass fell, resulting in a cut hand. "John, could you assist me with this?" he inquired. I glanced at my wife dancing and then at Chad. In retrospect, I should have gone to my wife for assistance, but instead I accompanied Chad to the men's restroom. The injury was relatively minor, but I assisted him in cleaning and wrapping it with a paper towel. Upon returning to the table, I observed my wife departing with Brad. I hastened to follow, but Chad was already in pursuit. When we reached the exterior, I saw Abby entering a vehicle with Brad. I began to run to catch up, but Chad tripped me. I fell, but I quickly recovered and continued running. "What is the matter with you?" "Brad is merely exploiting your wife," I heard Chad say with a smile. Thelma arrived a few minutes later. In a matter of seconds, Abby's perception of Brad shifted from mere admiration to a romantic interest. She confided in Chad and me, expressing her desire to spend time with him. In response, we facilitated an opportunity for them to spend time together. This revelation was met with a strong reaction from my wife. She asserted that I should have been informed about this development. Abby's sentiments were echoed by Chad, who encouraged me to embrace the situation and let it unfold naturally. In a fit of frustration, I struck Chad directly on the nose. The sound of the impact was the only positive aspect of that evening. Thelma then confronted me, launching a series of punches and kicks. Fortunately, Fred had witnessed the altercation and intervened. He then proceeded to follow me out. He promptly intervened by grasping Thelma and relocating her away from me. He then assaulted my husband. Thelma began to vocalize her objections, stating, "No, he didn't." Fred responded with composure, asserting that the two of them had initiated the attack and that Chad was merely defending himself. Thelma then proceeded to call 911, and the police arrived approximately 10 minutes later to take statements. Fred maintained his narrative and I did the same, emphasizing that Chad had initially tripped me. The individuals who had gathered after the commotion only observed Thelma attacking me. They informed the officers that I observed that I was merely attempting to evade her grasp. Ultimately, Chad and Thelma were apprehended by the authorities upon their departure. I was profoundly disheartened. I returned to our table and discovered the two women displaying cheerful demeanors. I inquired about the whereabouts of the other individuals. Helen relayed that Chad and Thelma had been taken into custody for assaulting me. I responded, struggling to maintain composure, that I was disconcerted by this turn of events. Abby departed with Brad, appearing to be quite content about it, which was contrary to our expectations. Anna stated that she was supposed to merely step outside with Brad, take a few photographs, and then return. It became evident that my wife and Thelma had not informed her of this plan. "Could you clarify the actual plan?" I inquired as I proceeded to the bar. "Are you going to be okay?" Fred inquired. "I'm uncertain about the specifics," I replied. "I hope my wife is simply out for a ride with that movie star and will be back shortly. However, when she returns, we'll need to engage in a serious discussion." "Listen, John Fred," he said with concern. "I don't want to exacerbate this situation further, but Brenda informed me that Brad Talbot is known for pursuing married women. He appears to derive pleasure from placing wagers on them. I hope he isn't one of them, but you should be aware. I was prepared for the worst. My heart sank. I was unsure of what to do, but I assured Fred I would be fine before returning to the table. I attempted to call Abby on her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. When I sat down, the atmosphere was tense. The wives looked ashamed and their husbands were furious. I kept trying to call Abby with no luck. Eventually, the other couples decided to head back to the hotel. I stayed behind, hoping Abby would return. I waited for half an hour before going to the hotel. I stayed until 3 o'clock. At 4 a.m., I began calling Abby's phone with increasing frequency, growing increasingly frustrated. I subsequently checked out of the hotel and returned home. I arrived at approximately 4 p.m. and sat on the couch. I must have fallen asleep because I was awakened by sunlight at 7 a.m. At 10 p.m., Abby had still not returned. There were no messages from her on my phone, so I checked our Facebook page, which was flooded with pictures of Brad and Abby leaving the nightclub and going to his house, with Abby entering his house on his arm. I also checked Hollywood websites, which were discussing Brad's latest conquest. I was enraged. I promptly contacted my attorney, whose call was redirected to his residence on the weekend. He was initially displeased with my request for counsel until I elucidated the circumstances. He advised me to await Abby's return and an opportunity to clarify the situation. At approximately 11 a.m., Abby arrived, her demeanor initially cheerful, but it dissipated upon seeing my expression. She asserted that she had not done anything untoward, stating that they had merely conversed throughout the night. I was aware that I should have inquired with you, but I was confident that you would have declined. You are aware of my affinity for cinema and Brad Pitt. Last night's events resembled a fairy tale. Nothing occurred, John. I still hold you in high regard and cherish our relationship. I gazed at her with a look of intense disapproval. I am imploring you to pack up and go to your parents' residence. I am unable to even look at you right now. Why are you making such a fuss over this? She said, sounding annoyed and somewhat frightened. We merely conversed, there is no issue. However, it is a significant issue to me. I said through clenched teeth. I do not believe for a second that nothing happened. However, let us postulate for a moment that nothing did. Would you still? You have publicly humiliated me. Now, you are being overly dramatic. Abby retorted, hands on her hips outside of our group. No one knows anything, and Helen and Anna know it was just harmless fun for me. You are behaving in an inappropriate manner. I snapped, causing Abby to flinch. I had never talked to her like this before. It is all over the news. They have photos of you and Brad leaving the club, going to his house, and by now, there are probably shots of you left his house this morning. I believe our marriage is irretrievably damaged, so please gather your belongings and depart before I act in a way that I will regret. Please, John, I think you are exaggerating the situation. Abby pleaded, her eyes red-rimmed and welling up with tears. She continued, I love you so much. I am sorry for upsetting you, but there was no physical contact. I thought you would understand once you knew the truth. We need to work through this. Please consider the girls. You did not think about them. When you left with that individual, whom I understood to be a movie star, I expressed my disquiet at the prospect of your engaging in similar behavior with Stacy or Gail when they reached an appropriate age. Abby's complexion altered significantly at my words and she subsequently became visibly distressed. I am profoundly sorry, John. I had not anticipated that events would unfold in this manner. I have erred grievously and I ask for your forgiveness. You were correct in your assumption that I was experiencing heightened levels of anger. I was compelled to remove her from the situation before I acted in a way that I would regret. Consequently, I left her. I proceeded to our bedroom and retrieved a suitcase, which I proceeded to fill with her belongings. Abby, in a voice choked with sobs, requested that I assist her. I declined, and after a few minutes, she completed the task and exited the room. I did not offer to help her with the luggage, but instead waited until she had left and then closed the door with a resounding thud. I then observed her place the bag in the vehicle's trunk and cover her head with her hands. I was tempted to offer her comfort, but after approximately 20 minutes, she initiated the engine and departed. I promptly contacted my parents to inform them of the situation. I requested their assistance in prolonging the girl's stay and, in the event of Abby's arrival, their willingness to relay the information to her. They consented, and I was subsequently left to contemplate the deterioration of my marriage. I repeatedly replayed the events in my mind, questioning the veracity of Abby's assertion that nothing had transpired. I was uncertain, but my instincts indicated that she was being untruthful. Could I forgive her and move forward, perhaps if no one else knew, as she believed, but now that it was all over the internet, I saw no way to salvage our marriage. I wanted revenge against them both, but I could not think of a way to do it. I cried for at least an hour, pounding on walls and doors as I walked around. I felt powerless. It was evident that seeking retribution against Brad, a prominent figure in the Hollywood film industry, would be futile. Divorce would undoubtedly result in significant financial implications. However, I was prepared to pursue a career from home and advocate for full custody of the children if necessary. I believed that my stability and commitment as a parent would be advantageous in such a scenario. Abby, on the other hand, seemed to underestimate the potential consequences of her actions, particularly the possibility of a divorce that could disrupt the lives of her children. The prospect of such a scenario was particularly distressing for me, particularly around 1 o'clock. As I was preparing another cup of coffee, the telephone rang. Thus far, the media had not located my number, but I was aware that this would not last. "Hello," I responded. "Is this John Sawyer? And is your wife's name Abby?" A woman's voice inquired, "Are you interested in speaking with reporters?" "No," I replied, "I'm not interested in talking to reporters." "Good," she responded. "I hate them too." "Who is this?" I asked, preparing to terminate the call. "I'm Rita Summers," she replied. "Brad Talbot is my fiancé." "I know that man," I said, eager to end the call. "Do you love your wife?" Rita inquired. "Despite everything," I sighed. "I still love her, but after all that has happened, I do not see how we can save our marriage. If I could offer you a way to save your marriage and also salvage my relationship with Brad, would you be interested?" My heart raced. I had to sit down and think. Finally, I said yes. I want to save my marriage, but I do not see how. Once again, there was a soft giggle followed by a sigh. I have loved Brad for a long time. We have known each other since childhood. He came from a dysfunctional family, similar to my own. His father was a womanizer, and his mother harbored animosity towards men, including Brad. She consistently demonstrated a lack of affection towards him, regardless of his actions. He had been involved with married women previously, which I believe was his way of attempting to find the love his mother never provided. My family was similarly troubled. My mother was an alcoholic, and my father was physically abusive towards me during my childhood. Brad served as a source of stability and love for me, and I held him in high regard. However, he relocated when his parents separated, which caused me significant distress. After weeks of separation, we reunited in Hollywood following the success of our respective careers. Despite my awareness of Brad's past, I was initially hesitant to pursue a relationship with him. However, upon reconnecting, we experienced a renewed sense of love and commitment. When we got engaged, Brad asserted that he was no longer involved with other women. When I inquired about your wife, he denied any involvement. While I cannot confirm this definitively, the mere possibility of losing Brad is causing me significant distress. Similarly, my wife has denied any involvement, yet the prospect of losing her is equally painful. To what extent do you believe her account? I do not believe it. I know Brad, and it is not his nature to invite a woman to his home and engage in no sexual activity. However, it is possible that more unusual occurrences have taken place. Nevertheless, I assume that something did occur, and I want him to recognize the pain he has caused me. I also want your wife to feel the same pain. I am unsure if this will resolve the situation, but I hope we can move forward with our partners. I am willing to do so, but how should we proceed? We should start talking to our partners. Regarding the prospect of reconciliation, I will initiate communication with Brad, although I am currently disinclined to engage in conversation with him. After a period of approximately 2 weeks, I will commence discussions with your wife. It would be prudent to allow your wife to return to your residence at a similar time. I will provide guidance on the appropriate distance to maintain and the necessity for abstinence from sexual intercourse. It would be unwise to immediately reinstate her into your life, as she will be residing with you once she returns. We will have dinner together, and I will elucidate the details of my proposed plan. I am still uncertain about the specifics of the plan, but since I did not have any superior alternatives, I decided to proceed with it. First, I contacted my parents and informed them that I would be picking up the girls in approximately 30 minutes. Then, I contacted my administrative assistant, Joni, and informed her that I would be working from home for the following week. From her sympathetic tone, I could discern that she was already aware of the situation involving Brad and Abby. She offered to provide assistance in any way she could. Next, I contacted Abby's parents' residence. Abby's father answered the phone, expressing his regret over the recent developments and feeling embarrassed when I requested to speak with Abby. I informed him that I wished to return home to discuss the situation with Abby. I suggested that we allow ourselves a period of separation to allow us to regain our equilibrium. I will be working from home next week, you have work from Monday to Wednesday. I propose that we arrange for you to collect the girls on Wednesday evening, when we can discuss the matter in depth. I will take them on Sunday evening. He replied, Please, John. I want to come home now. I want us to be a family. Don't you want that too? I replied, I thought we were. I'm not sure now. I'll see you on Wednesday at 5. I collected the girls and informed them that their mother was spending a few days with their grandfather and grandmother. They had numerous inquiries, but they ceased discussing the matter when we arrived at Chuck E. Cheese. After a few hours of games and dinner, we proceeded to return home. As soon as we entered the residence, the telephone rang. I did not recognize the number and, therefore, ignored it. However, the telephone continued to ring at 5-minute intervals. I finally disconnected the call at approximately 6 p.m. My cellular telephone rang, and it was Abby. She inquired as to why I was not answering. I informed her that it was just reporters inquiring about my supposed affair with Brad Talbot. There is no such thing as an affair, Abby retorted. You have not told the truth. If that is the case, then you need to disseminate that information more widely, because the general public is not convinced. Eventually, Stacy returned the phone, stating that her mother wished to speak with me. Abby requested to return home, but I informed her that I required additional time. On Wednesday evening, Abby arrived at approximately 4 o'clock. Instead of 5, I was somewhat displeased that she did not adhere to my instructions. However, I chose to overlook it. The girls were delighted to see her, and Abby showered them with kisses when she came to kiss me. I stepped back, and she appeared hurt and annoyed. This is how it is going to be, she stated irritably. Perhaps I should simply take the girls and leave if that is what you want, I replied calmly, beginning to walk away. Abby quickly interjected, sounding somewhat panicked. Let's sit down and discuss the issues at hand. The girls proceeded to pack their overnight bags, as Abby had informed them they would be visiting their grandparents. What are we to do? Abby inquired, after an awkward silence. I wish I knew, I replied. At this moment, I feel hurt, embarrassed, and angry. I am unsure how to cope with these emotions. I can only offer an apology. Abby said, her voice trembling slightly, I made a significant mistake. Please, I asked for your forgiveness. I do not wish to lose you, Abby. However, the situation is not that straightforward. I stated, adopting a defensive posture with my arms crossed, that I am perceived as foolish. My wife has been unfaithful, and I have not taken any action. Abby began to weep. I never intended to cause you pain. I was simply eager to meet Brad Talbot and view his residence. I was aware that you would be displeased, but I did not anticipate the extent of the repercussions. Abby, I sincerely hope we can resolve this matter amicably. I said, and she replied, her face lit up momentarily, but I have also consulted with a lawyer. In the event of a divorce, I intend to seek full custody of the girls. You should consider obtaining your own legal counsel. I do not desire a divorce, I am merely suggesting that we prepare for the possibility of it. I do not wish to cause you pain. I persisted, but she replied, given the considerable attention you are currently receiving, the courts may be inclined to favor my custody request. I implore you, Abby, to reconsider. I am prepared to do anything to repair our relationship. Why don't we continue discussing this matter? I propose that we have lunch together next Sunday when you drop off the girls. If you keep the girls with you, she replied, her voice betraying a hint of anger. I am not comfortable with this constant back and forth. It is not beneficial for the girls. If you do that, I will be forced to initiate divorce proceedings without delay. Furthermore, I must remind you that your reputation has already been tarnished. I am highly skeptical that the courts will view you favorably at this juncture. Abby appeared to become visibly disheartened. I am not willing to do that. I do not desire a divorce at the outset of the second week. I returned to my office where my assistants were understanding, but some of my customers were less sympathetic. Two of them. I found the situation amusing and initiated a teasing response. I requested that they cease their teasing, but they persisted. I informed them that I was terminating our business relationship and transferring their portfolios to another brokerage firm, despite their attempts to apologize. I made it clear that our business was over. After this, the discussion among my clients about my wife and Brad ceased around 2:00 p.m. Rita contacted me to inquire about my plans for the evening. When I informed her that I had no commitments, she replied, "Good, because you are having dinner with me at the Zoom room at 7. She then provided the dress code as formal. I was taken aback when Rita mentioned that she had reservations at the Zoom room. It is the most upscale restaurant in town, and securing a table there typically requires significant effort. Additionally, the cost is considerable, particularly for an evening engagement at 7 p.m. I arrived at the appointed time and was led to a private dining room in the rear of the establishment. The room was furnished with a table for two, but the overall effect was one of opulence, with a velvet couch. My mind was compelled to speculate on the nature of any previous occupants of the couch. Approximately 5 minutes later, Rita Summers entered the room as I was rising from my seat. I was compelled to observe that she was remarkably attractive. I was certain that the entire restaurant would have turned to look when she entered. She appeared to be approximately 5 feet 4 inches with long blonde hair, warm brown eyes, and a figure that was striking. However, it was her smile that truly captivated me. It had a quality that made me feel alive. I was unable to comprehend why Brad would deviate from a woman of her caliber. "Can I call you John?" she inquired as she took a seat across from me. I nodded, and she inquired, "What should I call you?" "Rita," I replied with a soft laugh that elicited a smile. We proceeded to order drinks and engage in conversation. I shared some details about my profession, but primarily, I discussed. She proceeded to regale me with amusing anecdotes pertaining to my daughter or my somewhat awkward teenage years. When the waiter returned to take our order, I was reluctant to hasten Rita's narrative, yet I was keen to learn more about her proposed plan. I was acutely aware of the need to salvage my marriage but was uncertain of the optimal approach. Once we had concluded our repast, Rita adopted a relaxed posture in her chair. Rita began with a melancholy smile, recounting how the situation had been orchestrated by the unscrupulous Chad Tompkins. He had assumed the role of a prominent movie agent, but his true identity was that of a pimp. He had facilitated the involvement of unsuspecting individuals, particularly married women, with movie stars. The number of people he had helped to ensnare was staggering. "These celebrities, you're talking to someone who has first-hand experience with them," I said with a growl, although I didn't realize Chad's exact role until now. "At least I got him arrested." Rita's eyes lit up, which is positive, but don't be too harsh on your wife. Brad could charm the socks off Mother Teresa. Your wife isn't the first married woman to fall for his act, but I am resolved to make her the last. If I am unable to do so, the plan I have devised will at least result in him and your wife facing the consequences of their actions. I cannot guarantee that either of us will still be with our partners once my plan has been executed, but regardless of the outcome, we will have the satisfaction of not allowing them to evade accountability for their actions. Rita's leniency toward my wife was unexpected, but I was reassured to learn that consequences would be forthcoming. I was eager to ascertain her intentions, so I inquired about her plan. She replied, "I simply wish to say that you are commendable. It is evident that you possess considerable charm. However, your wife made a grave misstep by jeopardizing your marriage. Had our encounter occurred under different circumstances, I might have been intrigued. It is commendable that you acknowledge this, but it is imperative to recognize the stark differences between our respective worlds. In addition to your physical beauty, you also exemplify remarkable compassion. Your kindness is noteworthy. Despite our disparate backgrounds, it is clear that I am drawn to you. I am grateful for your consideration. Over the next 2 weeks, I intend to become more closely aligned with you. I am not a client. You provide financial advice, correct? Reader confirmed this with a smile. I am still uncertain about the next steps, so I will invest some money with you, she explained. However, we will need to have several meetings to discuss the details. I believe 4 meetings should suffice, with 2 at your office and 2 over lunch. I will choose the locations. I am still unsure about the purpose. I can set up an account, but you will need to invest at least $10. Oh, I'll be investing much more than that, she said, her smile widening. Meanwhile, you will not inform your wife that I am your client. You will continue to meet with her to discuss reconciliation. After 2 weeks, you will allow her to move back home, but you will not engage in sexual intercourse with her. On October 15th, you and your wife will attend the reading. Is the gala a charity event that I have been involved with for years? Most people are unaware that I am associated with it, which is how I prefer it. I typically attend every other year, but I will be there this year, and you and your wife will join me. I was following along until the charity gala. I am aware that the tickets cost $220. Each ticket costs $220, which I consider to be an exorbitant sum. Reader emitted another brief, mirthful laugh and flashed me a smile that sent a frisson of excitement down my spine. I assured her that her tickets would be complimentary and suggested that she simply inform her wife that they were provided by a client. I remained perplexed as to how this would benefit me. You see, John, part of the entertainment for the evening is an auction of escorts. Auction, she giggled once more. We auction off willing men to the women in attendance. The highest bidder gets to put a sort of slave collar on them. Then, the men are at the mercy of the winning women. Reader explained with a laugh before continuing, most of the men are bachelors, but married men also participate, allowing their wives to bid on them occasionally. A married man may be won by someone other than his wife. Those married men usually behave because they are aware that their wives would be furious if they did not. However, at this year's gala, a married man will be auctioned off, and his wife will not be the winning bidder. What happens afterward will not be innocent. I still had a puzzled look on my face. I read, laughed, and gave my hand to Pat. You're the married man, who will be auctioned off, and I will be the winning bidder. Therefore, you only have to rent a tuxedo, buy your wife a new dress, and be my guests. At that moment, it became clear to me that Reader's plan was brilliant. Both Brad and Abby would experience what we had gone through. I knew it was all a show, but just spending the night with Rita Summers while everyone assumed the worst would help balance things out. By removing the focus from me as a goal and redirecting it towards Brad, my wife would gain a deeper understanding of the hurt and embarrassment I felt. This could potentially facilitate the seeking of counseling and the subsequent resolution of this problematic situation. The subsequent weeks passed rapidly. During Rita's initial visit to my office, the other women there were visibly excited. Our lunch meetings were held in discreet restaurants. Although I was unable to comprehend the rationale behind the necessity for such confidentiality, the majority of our discussions could have transpired in my office. Primarily, we engaged in the exchange of narratives. These were enjoyable lunches, and I acquired a great deal of insight into Rita and Brad. She exhibited a profound affection for him and would experience profound distress if they were to terminate their relationship. However, she was prepared to terminate the relationship if he persisted in his previous conduct. A week prior to the gala, I permitted Abby to return home. I informed her that she could return home, but I made it clear that I would be sleeping in the guest room. She seemed hurt but did not argue. On the Wednesday before the gala, I came home with the tickets, and Abby's eyes lit up. She began talking excitedly about all the celebrities who would be there. Then, she scolded me for spending so much money, stating that it did not cost me anything. I explained that one of my clients had given me the tickets. The tickets were purchased for the evening's event. It would be beneficial to procure a new dress for the occasion. Abby was delighted. I experienced a moment of empathy, but then I recalled an earlier experience where I had anticipated a magical evening, only to end up feeling foolish. It was time for her to comprehend my distress. Upon arrival, there were approximately 500 individuals already present. In the vicinity of the auction, I observed a table where prospective bidders could register their interest. A queue of men was forming, and I noted that there were approximately 5 individuals who appeared to be particularly keen. I observed the men in the line and turned to Abby, inquiring about her opinion. I indicated the table where one could register for the auction, noting that it was for charity and that we had not paid for the tickets. I suggested that I sign up and that she could bid on me. Abby laughed, but her response lacked the musicality that Rita had exhibited. I informed her that I did not have any money and that I had not brought my wallet because it would not fit in my bag. I had brought cash with me, and I offered her $1. It is likely that you will not have to pay more than $50, but given that the proceeds will go to charity, it would be reasonable to offer at least $200. $1,000, Abby said with a smile. I proceeded to the front of the line and completed the requisite form. Upon reaching the front, I observed that approximately 18 or 20 individuals had already signed up. Had I been aware that this was a mere ruse, I would have lacked the courage to participate. Just as I was about to depart, a woman at the desk informed me that I needed to complete a few additional steps. She then inquired as to whether I was married. I nodded in affirmation, and she proceeded to hand me another form. She then stated, "I hope your wife is with you, or you will be unable to participate." She then informed me that my wife would need to fill out and sign the form. I then motioned for Abby and proceeded to explain the situation to her. She then proceeded to fill out the form, unaware of the clause that she was agreeing to allow me to engage in any requested activities. She was consenting to comply with the requests of the highest bidder once the requisite paperwork was completed. We proceeded to locate our assigned table, where Rita had seated us with 2 actresses, a television news anchor, and 2 actors from a nationally syndicated soap opera. My wife was impressed not only by the individuals at our table but also by those at the other tables. At the commencement of the auction, all the male participants were called forward. I smiled at my wife and proceeded to the stage, as it transpired that there were 24 contestants. I surmised that Rita's intention was for me to be the last to take the stage, as by that point, the total funds raised had exceeded $300,000. The bidding was spirited and engaging, with a final contestant from the local area and an announcer who was well known in the field. The renowned game show host revealed his name to be John Sawyer and that he is married with 2 children. It is likely that his wife is currently engaged in financial transactions on his behalf. In light of this, it seems appropriate to commence the bidding at the sum of $50. I posit that he is worth a minimum of $100. An older woman in the front row interjected. "Can you handle the dishes, dear?" I inquired, eliciting a hearty chuckle in response. "I can wash and dry them," I added, prompting another round of mirth from the crowd. "That's more than my husband can manage," quipped another older woman. "I'll offer $200, she continued, only to have the price rapidly ascend to $500. Before long, I heard Abby's voice, declaring, "I'll bid $1. The crowd expressed approval with cheers, but almost immediately, a younger woman offered a higher bid of $22,000. Before long, the bidding had reached $5,000. I glanced at Abby, who appeared bewildered. I simply shrugged at her from the back of the room. A bid of $10,000 was made, followed quickly by one for $15,000. Had I not known the event was staged, I might have become overly excited. The bid reached $25,000 and I began to feel nervous. I thought a few thousand would seal the deal, but the amount was much higher than I anticipated. Finally, from the far side of the room, I heard Rita's voice. I made a bid of $100. There was a palpable silence, not only due to the substantial sum involved but also because of the identity of the bidder. Rita Summers moved to a position just below the stage as the crowd expressed their enthusiasm. She smiled at me and then turned to address the crowd, stating, "I don't even care if he can do dishes." This remark was met with a resounding cheer. I must admit that I was flushed with embarrassment. Rita approached and placed the traditional collar around my neck, bestowing upon me a kiss on the lips. We returned to where Abby was seated. She was taken aback, uncertain of her next action. Ian leaned over and kissed her gently on the lips, then handed her the car keys. In accordance with the established plan, I became Miss Summers for the next 12 hours. I will see you back at the house, Abby. Rita and I danced a few times at the gala. During the course of the evening, Abby repeatedly nibbled on my ear. I could see Abby watching me with a look of shock when Rita took my hand and led me out of the ballroom. After the gala, Abby's lips began to tremble. Rita then took me to another nightclub in a limousine. We danced and talked there for an hour, and then we went to a private screening of a new movie filled with Hollywood A-listers. The film was, in my estimation, of poor quality, a sentiment that Rita echoed. However, when we spoke with the director, we both offered praise. Later, the limousine transported us to a section of town that was somewhat disreputable. I observed 2 vehicles following us, which Rita informed me were part of her security detail. She pointed out 2 dilapidated houses across the street, one with its porch lights still on, which I recognized as my former residence. The house across the street was where Brad lived. It was not as dangerous a neighborhood as it once was, but it was still quite rough. It was almost 3 o'clock. The time is 12 a.m. Upon arrival at Rita's condominium, she informed me that she was the proprietor of 6 such residences. These included 1 in Hollywood, 1 in New York, 1 in Florida, 2 in Europe, and 1 in South America. This particular condominium was 3 stories high, equivalent to 2 regular-sized homes. Rita proceeded to prepare a beverage for me, which I consumed while seated on the couch. I began to laugh. I wish I had a camera to capture anyone's reaction. I feel a certain degree of guilt about this, but not quite as much as I feel about other things. Rita sat close to me. She placed her hand on my knee. John, I urge you to be honest with me. Do you truly believe your wife when she says that nothing happened? Neither of us can prove it, but I believe that they did. I was taken aback by her proposition. I had assumed we would go to Rita's home and sleep separately, allowing everyone to believe we were intimate when we were not. However, now she was offering herself to me, I quickly decided that perhaps if I were a better man, I would have declined. Nevertheless, I was still wounded by my wife's actions, and I was also intrigued by the prospect of being with Rita Summers. We kissed passionately on the couch for approximately 20 minutes. We remained on the couch for approximately 20 minutes, during which time we engaged in close physical contact. Eventually, she took my hand and led me to her bedroom. Once inside, Rita began to dance, a performance that had piqued my interest since our first encounter. As I observed Rita dancing, I felt a sense of possibility, as though I might succeed in achieving a level of intimacy with her that I had not yet attained. When Rita removed her clothing, she guided me onto her bed, while my wife was adept at initiating physical contact. I found Rita's skills to be even more gratifying than my wife's. It is possible that the excitement of the moment was the sole factor influencing my actions. As I approached the final stage of my encounter with Rita, I informed her that our morning together had been particularly special. It was a time filled with quiet talks and close moments that fostered a profound sense of connection between us. Her kind words and gentle touch imbued our time together with a sense of warmth and comfort. We laughed and held each other, allowing ourselves to become immersed in the moment and to forget the passage of time. Our proximity and shared experience fostered a deep sense of closeness between us. As time passed, we developed a greater sense of trust in one another. Rita's gaze conveyed a profound sense of affection and importance. Her eyes seemed to make promises of many more enjoyable moments to come. As the morning sun illuminated the room, we realized that we had spent a considerable amount of time simply enjoying each other's company. Despite the lateness of the hour, Rita's laughter reassured me. It was one of those mornings. The experience was characterized by a sense of ease and contentment, as though everything in the world was just right. It was a testament to the joy derived from the simple act of being together. It served as a reminder of the immense value in having a partner who understands and cares about you. It also highlighted the importance of having someone in your life who can provide a sense of security and comfort, particularly when you're away from your spouse. Rita's presence offered a reassuring reminder that there are people in this world who can provide that level of support and understanding. During our time together, Rita's demeanor was playful and light-hearted. She reminded me of my wife, who was waiting at home, and that nothing untoward had occurred. I found myself laughing at her playful tone. After showering together, after dressing, Rita prepared eggs for me while we awaited the limousine that would transport me home. I experienced a sense of tranquility. If Abby was amenable, I believed we could now begin the process of moving on from the incident. Upon entering our residence, I discovered Abby in a state of distress. She inquired as to whether I would return. She expressed uncertainty about my whereabouts, stating, "The news is circulating about Rita Summers paying $100. I initially considered the expenditure of $1,000 for a single night in your company to be an act of vengeance. However, upon observing the way she regarded you, I came to perceive that the investment was motivated by genuine affection. In light of my own actions, I do not hold you responsible for your decision. Abby, I have misrepresented the truth. There was no incident." Initially, she regarded me with a hint of anger, but it quickly dissipated. "Rita is a new client of mine." I informed Abby that I felt it was only fair, given Brad's actions towards me. Additionally, Rita is the one who provided the tickets. Typically, she donates $100. Every year, at this time, she had previously chosen to remain anonymous. However, on this occasion, she elected to make her actions public, thereby sending a message to her fiancé. It is therefore accurate to conclude that her actions were motivated by a desire to exact revenge on Brad. The question of whether we will have a future together is, of course, a matter for you. If you are prepared to work on our marriage and attend counseling, I am willing to do so." Abby rushed into my arms and I kissed her passionately. I then guided her to our bedroom. Despite my fatigue, I managed to find the energy to engage in sexual intercourse with her on 2 occasions. I then fell asleep until my 2 daughters bounced onto the bed at approximately 2 o'clock. In the afternoon, we had a peaceful dinner with the girls. Once they were tucked in bed, Abby and I sat together on our patio holding hands. In that moment, I felt certain that we could mend our marriage and move forward together. Epilogue: Abby and I sought help from a counselor named Wendy, who played a significant role in resolving our issues. Wendy was more critical of Abby than I had anticipated. I had assumed she might be more sympathetic because she is a woman, but she highlighted that Abby had planned her affair while I had not, despite both of us maintaining that there was no physical contact. I do not believe that Wendy fully accepted our accounts. Nevertheless, she emphasized that the decision to seek help from someone other than our spouses was a betrayal in itself. The act of having an affair with another person represents a betrayal of one's marital vows. During the counseling sessions, Abby displayed a noticeable degree of embarrassment. Wendy attributed this to the fact that I had spent the night with Rita, whom I was engaged to at the time. This was indeed the case, but Wendy was unaware of the extent of my involvement in planning the affair. The counseling sessions proved to be beneficial, yielding unexpected outcomes. Abby has become disinclined to engage in leisure activities such as going to the movies or watching them on television. However, she will still accompany the girls if they express a desire to see a children's movie about Chad and Thelma. I withdrew the charges against Thelma, explaining to the authorities that I believed she was acting in self-defense. However, I proceeded with the charges against Chad, resulting in a 3-month sentence. A month-long sentence in the county detention center led to the dissolution of our relationship with Chad and Thelma. Abby ceased communication with Thelma, resulting in a significant rift between them. The source of this conflict was Abby's accusation that Thelma was responsible for the near dissolution of our marriage. It is challenging to comprehend the rationale behind my wife's actions in this matter. Rita and Brad celebrated their nuptials in a ceremony that was widely publicized as the wedding of the century, attended by over 1,000 guests, was a significant event in Hollywood. Abby and I were not invited, but I did send Brad a wedding gift. I purchased a pair of bull's horns, sliced them in half, and shipped them with a note stating, "You keep away from my wife, and I'll steer clear of yours." I was still quite angry with Brad. However, Rita informed me that he found the gift amusing. In fact, he even framed the note and displayed it in his study, as is customary in Hollywood. Their marriage only lasted a year, but it ended in accordance with Rita's wishes. When she discovered that Brad was unfaithful, she initiated divorce proceedings. The dissolution of their marriage was amicable, and despite the dissolution of their marriage, the couple remained on amicable terms. Rita revealed to me that she had genuinely loved Brad, and their relationship seemed to be characterized by a profound bond. However, this emotional connection was ultimately insufficient to sustain their marriage. It is also noteworthy that Rita remains a client of our firm. When we initially set up her account, she made a deposit of $1 million. Despite the likelihood of closing the account following the completion of her revenge plan, Rita elected to maintain it. Upon reaching a balance of $1.5 million, she augmented the account by an additional $2 million. While we have not met in person since the gala, we engage in approximately 4 video calls per year to discuss her investments. On occasion, these calls serve a purely social purpose, providing an opportunity to catch up on life. Rita displays remarkable acumen in her professional endeavors. In terms of business, she is surprisingly conservative with her investments. I am unaware of her political views, although our quarterly updates on her portfolio take approximately 20 minutes and we subsequently spend an additional hour or two discussing other topics. Following her separation from Brad, Rita joked that she should have selected me over him. I responded with humor, noting that our backgrounds are disparate. Since then, she has teased me about monitoring my activities. She has even joked that if circumstances align and I am single while she has finished her acting career, she will pursue a romantic interest in me. I am aware that her comments are merely a formality, but it is a pleasant notion to entertain. Abby and I are approaching our 10th wedding anniversary. Despite encountering a few challenges along the way, our marriage has been exceptionally fulfilling. When I reflect on our journey, I am convinced that Rita's guidance played a pivotal role in maintaining our bond. I can no longer envision my life without Abby. Additionally, we have recently received the joyous news that Abby is expecting a baby boy, which has further deepened our happiness.